German police spent 10 years hunting a serial killer who never existed, and the evidence was perfect. By 2009, law enforcement across 3 European countries believed they were closing in on one of the most prolific killers of the modern era. The suspect had been linked to over 40 crimes. DNA evidence placed her at murder scenes, armed robberies, and assaults spanning years and hundreds of miles. Every lead converged. Every test confirmed it. And then investigators discovered something that should have been impossible. The killer was a ghost. Rewind to 2003. Heilbronn, a modest city in southwestern Germany, was rattled by a brutal murder. A woman was found stabbed repeatedly. The crime scene was processed by forensic teams. DNA evidence was collected. When the results came back, investigators found a profile that didn't match anyone in their databases. But they filed it anyway, logged it into the German National DNA Register, and waited for a match. Then it hit. Within months, the same DNA profile appeared at another crime scene. Then another, then another. By 2005, the profile had been linked to 15 separate incidents across Germany. The evidence was meticulous. The samples were tested and retested. Every protocol had been followed. Investigators called her the Phantom of Heilbronn, a woman with no criminal record, no known associates, and no explanation for how she could appear in so many places at once. The investigation became obsessive. Thousands of hours were spent chasing leads. Innocent women were questioned, detained, and released. Border patrols were alerted. Interpol was brought in. The profile spread to police databases across Austria and France. Every new match felt like the net was tightening. Every new test felt like confirmation. But no one asked the question that should have been asked from the start: what if the evidence itself was the crime? In 2009, a breakthrough seemed imminent. The Phantom's DNA was found at a crime scene in Austria. Austrian authorities arrested a woman they believed was the suspect. She was held, she was questioned, and she had an ironclad alibi. She'd been in prison the entire time the crime was committed. The arrest fell apart, but something worse unraveled with it. Investigators began to question their own evidence. They examined the laboratory procedures. They reviewed chain of custody logs, and they found it: contamination. The DNA profile hadn't come from a phantom killer. It had come from contaminated swabs, likely from a single source that had somehow infiltrated multiple crime scenes. The samples had been compromised, probably during collection or processing. Now, skeptics might ask, how does a single contamination source spread across 40 crime scenes in 3 countries? The answer reveals the real failure. The swabs weren't contaminated at the scenes. They were contaminated at the source, likely in the laboratory itself, or possibly during the manufacturing of the collection kits. One contaminated batch of swabs, distributed to multiple police departments, could explain everything. But here's where the scam, because that's what this is, gets darker. The contamination wasn't the only failure. The real deception was systemic. Investigators had become so convinced of the Phantom's existence that they stopped thinking critically. Each match reinforced the narrative. Each new crime seemed to confirm the theory. Confirmation bias isn't just a psychological quirk. In law enforcement, it's how innocent people get arrested and guilty ones walk free. Official investigation concluded in 2009. The Phantom of Heilbronn was declared a non-existent killer. The case files were closed, but the damage had already been done. Innocent people had been investigated. Resources had been diverted from real crimes. And the entire incident exposed a vulnerability in forensic science that most laboratories were unwilling to acknowledge. Contamination happens, and when it does, the system has no built-in safeguard to catch it. What's remarkable is how long the deception lasted. 10 years, 40 crime scenes, 3 countries, and the only thing that stopped it wasn't better science, it was an alibi. One suspect with an unshakable alibi forced investigators to finally look inward and question their own methods. It's a sobering reminder that forensic evidence, while powerful, is only as reliable as the human systems that handle it. The Phantom of Heilbronn wasn't a killer. She was a failure of protocol. She was a laboratory mistake that spiraled into an international manhunt. She was what happens when institutions trust their systems more than they trust their skepticism. And she's still out there, not as a criminal, but as a cautionary tale about how easily evidence can deceive us, even when we're certain it's telling the truth. The Heilbronn case forced German laboratories to overhaul their contamination protocols. Other European forensic services followed. Testing procedures became more rigorous. But the real lesson wasn't about DNA. It was about how deception works, not always because someone's lying intentionally, but because a system can lie to itself when no one's asking the right questions. Subscribe for more cases where the evidence itself becomes the con. Subscribe. Each week we uncover the systems designed to deceive and the moments they finally break.